What if I told you that a man worth $100 million woke up this morning and felt trapped? Not trapped by debt, not trapped by a boss, not trapped by bills, trapped by the very money that was supposed to set him free. This video isn't about poverty. It isn't about struggling. It's about something nobody warns you about on the way up. The higher you climb, the more invisible the cage becomes. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the way you think about money will never be quite the same. Let's start where most people start, with the dream. You know the one. You're sitting at work on a Tuesday. The meeting is pointless. The commute was long. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're doing the math. If I just had $1 million, I could stop. It's the most natural thought in the world, because everything around you confirms it. Movies, social media, the advice your parents gave you, the books on personal finance, they all say the same thing in slightly different words. Build wealth, reach the number, then you're free. And it makes sense. Logically, it does. If money is what forces you to trade your time for a paycheck, then enough money should end that trade. Simple equation, right? More money, less obligation, more freedom. So people set targets. $1 million, then 10 million, then maybe 100, and at every level, the goal stays the same. Just a little more, and then I'll be free. Here's the thing. Nobody's lying to you when they say this. The people who built this belief, they genuinely thought it was true. The problem isn't that they were dishonest. The problem is that they were wrong. And nobody figured that out until they were already inside the machine. But here's what's quietly happening beneath the surface. Money doesn't remove dependency, it transfers it. When you're broke, you depend on your employer. When you're comfortable, you depend on your investments. When you're rich, you depend on the systems that protect your wealth. The dependency never disappears, it just puts on a different suit. And here's what makes this hard to see. Each transition feels like freedom. Quitting your job feels like freedom. Buying property feels like freedom. Having a portfolio feels like freedom. But feelings aren't facts. Because at each of those levels, new rules appear, new obligations, new people and systems that suddenly have leverage over you. This is where things change. Because the conversation about money almost always stops at accumulation. How do you get it? But nobody asks the next question. What does it do to you once you have it? Let's go level by level, and let's be precise about this. At this level, the trap is obvious. You know what it is. You felt it. You work to cover your expenses. Your time belongs to whoever signs your check. You don't have choices. You have obligations. Most people escape this level and feel an enormous sense of relief. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. And that relief is real. That progress is real. But nobody talks about what quietly installs itself at this level, the identity of the earner. Once you start climbing, you start measuring yourself in income. Your salary, your raise, your bonus, your self-worth and your net worth start to merge. And that merger becomes a trap of its own. Because now, losing money isn't just a financial event, it's a personal attack. The person who was once trapped by poverty is now trapped by something subtler, the fear of going back. And fear, quiet, persistent, background fear, is one of the most powerful forms of control that exists. You don't feel chained, you feel motivated, but the outcome is the same. Ask yourself this: when did you last make a major life decision without calculating what it would cost you? This is the range most people are striving toward, and it's the range that produces the most sophisticated delusion. At this level, people start to feel like they have options. They can invest, they can start a business, they can save aggressively and imagine early retirement. And choices feel like freedom. But here's what's actually happening. Every dollar you accumulate starts making demands on your attention. Where should this money be? Is it working hard enough? What if inflation eats it? What if the market drops? Should I buy property? Should I start an LLC? What about taxes? The money hasn't freed your mind. It's occupied it. There's a concept in psychology called decision fatigue. The more choices you have, the more mental energy each choice requires. And at this level, every financial decision carries real consequences, so your brain treats it like a threat. The person with nothing has zero financial anxiety about their portfolio. The person with $500,000 thinks about it almost every day. It gets worse. At this level, your social world starts to shift. The people around you start to see you differently. Some friends become distant because money creates uncomfortable comparisons. Some family members start asking. Some colleagues become competitive. Nobody told you that accumulating wealth would quietly restructure your relationships, but it does, every time. And you can't unknow what you know. You can't unhave what you have. So you manage it, quietly, carefully, constantly. That's not freedom. That's a different kind of job. Something strange happens the moment someone crosses $1 million. You'd expect celebration, relief, a sense of arrival. And there is some of that, but almost universally, and this has been documented in research on wealth and well-being, there's something else. A quiet flatness. The milestone that was supposed to change everything doesn't quite change everything. The coffee tastes the same. The morning still comes. The anxiety didn't disappear. It just found new things to attach to. Why? Because the brain is adaptive. Whatever level you're at becomes the new normal. And the new normal always feels like not enough. This isn't weakness. This isn't ingratitude. This is neuroscience. The hedonic treadmill, the tendency for humans to return to a baseline level of satisfaction regardless of what happens to them, is one of the most well-documented phenomena in psychology. Lottery winners, people who recover from accidents, people who build fortunes, all trend back toward baseline. So the $1 million arrives. And within months, the mind recalibrates, and the new thought becomes, if I just had 5 million, then I'd really be free. The finish line moved, and it will keep moving, not because people are greedy, but because the brain was never designed to feel permanently satisfied. It was designed to keep reaching. Which means the strategy of accumulate until happy is built on a foundation that cannot hold. At this level, something structural begins to happen. The wealth becomes too large to manage casually, so you hire people, a financial advisor, an accountant, an attorney, maybe a family office. And here's the part that doesn't get talked about. Each of those people, each of those relationships creates a new dependency. Your advisor has an incentive to keep your money in motion. Your accountant has to be trusted with information that could ruin you. Your attorney knows things about you that you'd never want public. You now have a team, and teams require management. Teams have their own interests. Teams can misalign with yours. The person who once had one boss now has a quiet board of stakeholders. And the decisions that matter most, where to put the money, how to structure assets, how to protect what you've built, are now partially in someone else's hands. Because no single person can be expert enough in every domain to manage this alone. That's not a failure. That's just the math of complexity. But it means that the more wealth you have, the more you depend on other people to protect it. And those people have their own lives, their own mistakes, their own pressures. Think about that. The $10 million person doesn't just worry about money, they worry about the people who are managing their money. It's a layer of vulnerability that didn't exist at $100,000. Nobody puts that in the brochure. Now we arrive at the number in the title, $100 million. At this level, most people assume the story is over. The person is untouchable. The person is free. The person can do anything. And in some ways, yes, the physical constraints are gone. No mortgage anxiety, no salary negotiation, no worrying about a medical bill. But here's what quietly happens at this level. You become visible. And visibility, at scale, is its own form of exposure. A person with $100 million is a target. Not necessarily from criminals, though that's real, but from lawsuits, from regulatory attention, from political narratives, from journalists, from estranged family members, from people who feel they're owed something. The legal exposure alone changes how you live. Every public statement becomes risk managed. Every business decision gets filtered through liability. Every relationship gets quietly evaluated for intent. You start to wonder, Does this person want to know me or what I have? And that question, once it enters your mind, never really leaves. The wealthy aren't paranoid because they're unstable. They're cautious because the consequences of being wrong are catastrophic. At this level, trust becomes the scarcest resource. Not money, not time, trust. And a life where you cannot fully trust the people around you is a life with a particular kind of loneliness. The freedom that was supposed to arrive at $100 million got replaced by a different kind of calculation. Not, can I afford this? But, is this safe? Different question, same cage. Let's pull back now. Because what we've been watching, across all these levels, isn't just a financial story. It's a story about a promise that was never quite what it seemed. The promise was, accumulate enough and control ends. But what actually happens is, control doesn't end. It evolves. At 0, someone else owns your time. At 100,000, fear owns your decisions. At 1 million, your own psychology owns your satisfaction. At 10 million, the infrastructure owns your attention. At 100 million, visibility and trust become the binding constraints. The form changes. The function stays the same. And here's the deeper truth that this whole conversation has been building toward. The idea that freedom lives at a certain number was never really about money. It was about control. Specifically, the desire to stop feeling like external forces are running your life. That's a legitimate desire. That's a deeply human desire. But the structure we've been sold, earn more, accumulate more, then finally be free, doesn't actually solve for that because it treats freedom as a destination, when freedom is actually a practice. And that distinction changes everything. The people who seem most free, not just wealthy, but genuinely at ease, aren't the ones who hit a certain number. They're the ones who stopped making their internal state conditional on external circumstances. That sounds simple. It's not. It requires a different relationship with money entirely. Not indifference, not recklessness, but a refusal to let the number, whatever the number is, become the thing that determines how free you feel today. Because if you hand that authority to a future version of your bank account, you may never collect it. And the system, the whole ecosystem of products, advice, comparisons, status signals, benefits enormously from you staying on that treadmill. Not through conspiracy, not through malice, simply because a person who is perpetually striving is a person who keeps spending, investing, competing, and consuming. The economy doesn't need you to be free. It needs you to keep reaching. That's not an accusation. That's just an observation. And once you see it clearly, you get to decide what to do with it. So where does this leave us? Not with a 5-step plan, not with a number to hit, not with a product to buy, just with a question worth sitting with. What, specifically, are you expecting money to solve? Not in a general sense. Not freedom or security, but specifically, what does the day look like when you've made it? Who's in it? What are you doing? What feeling is finally present that isn't there now? Because that feeling, that specific internal state, might be more accessible than you think. It might not require the number you think it requires. Or it might. Maybe there are genuine material conditions that need to change before you can exhale. That's real. That's legitimate. But the point is to be precise about it. To stop outsourcing your sense of freedom to a vague future milestone, and to start asking whether any part of that freedom is available to you right now, in the life you already have. Because the moment you see this clearly, you stop playing the game the same way. Not because you stop caring about money, but because you stop confusing money for the thing you actually want. And that difference, small as it sounds, is everything. The cage was never the number. The cage was the belief that the number was the key. You've always had the key.